Have you ever felt overwhelmed the moment you open your eyes in the morning? Overstimulated by every sound, snapping at your kids before the day has even begun, or even the middle of the night when they wake you up? I know what that feels like. There was a season where I was constantly overstimulated and irritable, and I really didn't like the mom I had become. I would literally cry every morning, feeling like a bad mother, like someone who mentally abuses her child. And even though I knew this wasn't true, I still felt like I was because of the way that I constantly reacted out of irritation, and it made me feel guilty. But to escape that cycle, I had to do the hard work of renewing my thought patterns and make big intentional changes to slow my life down. It was hard, but it was so worth it because now I get to experience real peace and joy in motherhood. And I truly want that for you. So stick around because in this episode, I'm going to share with you the things that I did to break the cycle of constant overstimulation and being irritable to truly having peace and joy within the Lord that you ultimately pour out into your family, and that is the fruit that they will eat from you. Welcome to our Peaceful Heart podcast. I am Julie, a wife and mom who have had my fair share of emotional, overwhelmed moments in my home, feeling anxious, tired, and sometimes just irritable. But once I started seeking God constantly in the overwhelm, I began to experience unshakable peace. And that's what this podcast is about. Learning to surrender our thoughts, our emotions, our overwhelm in everyday moments to God so we can walk in the peace He promises to those who seek Him. So grab something warm to sip on, settle in your favorite spot, and let's lean into Jesus and learn to walk in His peace right in your home, starting from this episode. When my son was about 3 years old, he started having night terrors. I would put him to bed at about 7 p.m. and like clockwise at 11, he would wake up screaming, crying, kicking, and sometimes even hitting me. And nothing I could do would calm him down. Now, these episodes would last anywhere from like 1 hour to 3 hours. And just when he would finally fall back asleep, it would only be an hour or sometimes even two before it all started over again. And during the day, I couldn't stop thinking about how I reacted the night before. And this is the season where I would wake up every morning crying, feeling like I was failing as a mother. Because during those night terror moments at night, I wasn't the calm, gentle mom I had dreamed of being. I was exhausted. I went to bed anxious every night, and I would constantly feel on edge. I would start to go to bed at 7 p.m., like right after I put him down, like just bracing myself for when he would wake up again. And like I said, I would go to bed stressed and anxious. Eventually, I triggered IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome, and it's triggered due to stress. So my body was physically reacting to the emotional overwhelm and exhaustion I felt within that season. Even after the night terrors finally stopped, I couldn't find my joy again. I felt like I was just surviving, and I'm usually a very, very joyful person. So to constantly feel this way was new to me. And I'm going to be honest, it was difficult. It's difficult to constantly feel anxious and depressed when you are actually quite the opposite person. So I hated every moment. And I knew I couldn't keep living like that, emotionally shutting down and constantly feeling guilty about how I interacted with my son. So I started focusing on learning how to renew my mind, how to take care of myself emotionally and spiritually, and how to invite God into the chaos. I found a rhythm of peace I didn't even know was possible for a mom who was in the thick of it. Now, one thing I began to do was actually to slow down, and I don't just mean mentally. I mean literally move slower, like walk slower and do things more gently. Now, before, I used to rush through everything. I would literally run around my house trying to get everything done. Cleaning, organizing, multitasking. It sounds crazy, I know. Like running in your own home, it is crazy. Like it's unnecessary, but that was me. I would run around to get everything done, but I was constantly chasing this invisible finish line, trying to prove that I was on top of it all, but that pace was wrecking my nervous system. I was always in survival mode, so I made a conscious choice. First, I accepted I'm not going to get everything done in one day. Secondly, the conscious choice I made was to slow down. And like I said, this is literally moving slower. So now I stroll through my day and then I would take 5-minute breaks throughout the day. So the 5 minutes consists of standing outside or watering my plants. But whatever I do in those 5 minutes, I pray. And I ask the Lord to take my overwhelm away. I give my anxiety over to Him and I ask Him to fill me with peace. So in the beginning of doing this, I added more and more and more 5 minutes to my day because I was feeling so anxious and so overwhelmed. But then I got to a point where my entire day kind of consisted of talking to the Lord and giving everything to Him, and I just started experiencing His peace. So those 5-minute breaks that I felt that I needed in the beginning started to decrease again. I started taking those 5-minute breaks away because it was no longer necessary, because I started dwelling in God's peace throughout the entire day. Because once you start to have these moments with the Lord and you ask Him to fill you, and you start to realize that God is not a God of 5 minutes. God is a God of constants. He's always there. He's consistent in everything, in all of His ways. He's always with you. He's always there. When you ask Him for help, He's there to help you. And when you start to live like that, you start to experience Him more, and you start to realize that these 5-minute breaks is no longer needed because it has become like a lifestyle to you. And of course, once I started to dwell in the peace of the Lord, then I became more present with my son. I felt more relaxed and calm, and I wasn't snapping at my son like I used to. I just enjoyed him. So now when we play together, I'll find myself so immersed in the moment that I will lose track of time. And this is the version of me, like that's the mother I always dreamed of being. Being calm, gentle, patient, and always just present. Am I always this person 100%? No, definitely not. I don't think anyone can be. We have different seasons of life. However, the majority of my life is peaceful. The majority of my life, I dwell in God's peace. And if this resonated with you and you're tired of feeling overstimulated, emotionally exhausted, and constantly reacting in ways that leave you feeling guilty afterwards, I want to invite you to my free workshop, because you don't have to spend months trying to figure this out alone like I did. I want to help you shortcut the process and show you the exact shift that helped me break free from overwhelm, emotional burnout, and constant irritability in motherhood. Inside the workshop, I'll help you learn how to renew your mind, regulate your emotions with God, and rebuild emotional and spiritual strength so you can become a calm, more joyful, emotionally present mom without waiting for your circumstances to magically change first. So, imagine what it would feel like to stop living in survival mode, to stop snapping so quickly, to actually enjoy your children again and feel mentally lighter in your home. That peace is truly possible, and I would love for you to join me. You can sign up through the link in the show notes or at www.elevatedwife.com. It is completely free. Again, www.elevatedwife.com. elevatedwife.com. I hope to see you there. So even after I started slowing down, I was still dealing with so much guilt and shame over how I had reacted during those long nights when my son was having night terrors. The way I snapped, the frustration, the lack of gentleness. I replayed it all in my mind over and over again. I know you shouldn't, but I did. And that's when I realized I had to renew my mind. I knew the scripture 2 Corinthians 10 verse 5 that reads something in the line of, don't quote me on this, but Paul said, we capture their rebellious thoughts and bring them under the obedience of Christ. So I understood the part of the scripture, how to capture my rebellious thoughts. And if this is something you are unfamiliar with, it's something I talk about in my free workshop. So please go sign up for the workshop if you want to know more. So to get back, I understood the part of capturing our rebellious thoughts. But what truly brought me freedom and lasting transformation was learning what to do after taking those thoughts captive. It's not enough just to silence the lie. We have to replace them with truth. And not just any truth, but God's truth. Okay, in reality, there's probably only one truth, and that's God's truth. But anyway, you get what I'm saying. That's when a real renewing of the mind takes place. That's when actual transformation begins to happen. So, for example, if I had a thought like, I'm drowning in overwhelm, which I often did, I had to stop and recognize that thought as rebellious, as something that doesn't align with the truth of who God says I am. Then I would replace it with truth. When you pass through waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers, they shall not overflow you. That is in Isaiah 43 verse 1. That's the truth I had to speak over myself. But in order to do that, in order to recognize the lie and replace it with truth, I had to actually learn scripture. I had to spend time in the Word, reading my actual Bible. The more scripture I memorized and meditate on, the easier it became to spot those rebellious and deceptive thoughts and replace them with the truth of God's promises. And again, this is something that I teach in my free workshop that I linked in the show notes. But anyway, here's the thing. It is an ongoing process. We all have a sinful nature. We all get deceived by the enemy in our thoughts. But this one practice, replacing lies with truth, has set me free from so much. It has brought peace into places in my life where I once felt chaos. Like, it has helped me become the mom I want to be. Not perfect, of course, but deeply rooted in truth. Another change I had to make, which is a very practical one, was learning to put down my cell phone. Now, for a long time, I convinced myself that scrolling was my way of resting. I'd say things like, this is my time, or I deserve a break, as I obviously mindlessly flicked through the videos, but it truly, honestly, didn't bring me any rest. And if you're honest with yourself, you will also realize that scrolling is not a way of rest. Because I started noticing something that really, really convicted me. And I am ashamed to admit it, but I'm also humble enough to talk about it, since there could be other moms who might experience this. Now, if I had been scrolling on my phone and my son walked into the room, I'd instantly feel irritated, like he was interrupting me. But if I was in the kitchen cooking, or maybe I was folding laundry or even sewing, and he walked in, I didn't feel like he interrupted me. And I don't know why that is. Let's just call it the dark side of technology. I don't know. But anyway, I just realized scrolling wasn't just stealing my peace. It was putting a wall between me and my son. It was bringing up feelings between me and him that is not true. It made me mentally unavailable for him, even sometimes emotionally unavailable for him, because I feel interrupted, I feel irritated. Whereas when I'm busy doing something and he walks in, it's a feeling of love and wanting him to help me. And immediately I would start to talk with him. So once I started to realize this in myself, I had to put down my phone. Now, I'm not saying all scrolling is bad. Some nights my husband and I will lie in bed and laugh at silly videos together, and that actually fills us with joy and connection. But when my son is around, when I'm using it as a tool to rest, or when I'm meant to be present, I just realized scrolling robs me of the very thing I long for, and that is connection with my son. That is being a calm and present mom and just having clarity of mind. So now I choose something better. I put my phone down and I pick up the moment instead. And the piece that comes with that is something no screen can ever give you. Now, I know it is hard to feel like you're failing as a mom, like to carry guilt and shame and wonder if you'll ever feel light and joyful again. But I want you to know there is a way out. You don't have to stay stuck in survival mode. You don't have to be defined by how you've reacted in your hardest moments or in the past or even this morning. The turning point for me wasn't when my circumstances changed. It was when I changed, when I made intentional, conscious choices, when I started slowing down, taking my 5-minute breaks, and inviting God into every moment of my life, when I replaced lies with His truth. So again, if you're listening to this and you're feeling like this is me, I would love to invite you to my free workshop where I teach you exactly 3 biblical steps you can take to overcome your overwhelm and overstimulation and really sit at God's feet and experience the peace that He has for those who seek Him. Because freedom from guilt and overstimulation is possible, and it starts with one surrendered step at a time. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I truly hope this episode encouraged your heart and pointed you back to Jesus. If this conversation blessed you, I would love for you to share it with another wife or mom who needs this encouragement today. And if you haven't already, I'd love for you to follow the podcast so you don't miss future episodes. And then one last favor, if you don't mind, I want to ask you to leave a review because it truly helps this podcast reach more wives who are feeling overwhelmed and need this kind of encouragement. And it's also the only way for me to get to know you. So please leave that review. And remember, you don't have to carry it all. You just need to learn how to surrender it all. I'll see you in the next episode.